our speaker today, who is Mr. Dushyant Dave, Senior Advocate and the President of the Supreme Court Bar Association. I welcome you, sir, to our platform at Debrief Conversations. Senior Advocate Dushyant Dave does not need a special introduction. However, just to have a one-liner about him, we have all read about his judgments. We all have read about he supporting and being very vocal about the rights regarding advocates, taking the right stand at the right time. I am honored, sir, to have you here today. And today's topic is about contribution by the bar in the contemporary scenario. I now hand over the reins of the webinar. I now hand over the reins of the webinar to Mr. Dushyant Dave. We would be hearing out to him, and after his speech, we would be having a small question answer session. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure and privilege for me to be with you this evening. And I do hope that we will have some meaningful dialogue and discussion, and which might be, fruitful to both of us, you and me, in the times to come. Role of the bar during the contemporary times. Today we are facing COVID-19, perhaps the greatest challenge that humanity will face, at least in our lifetime. And therefore, it is undoubtedly one of the most difficult and trying periods in our lives. Let me begin by telling you one thing, and that we should never forget. And I do feel that we have been forgetting that in recent past. Think of the freedom struggle. Virtually the entire freedom struggle was led by lawyers, from Mahatma Gandhi to Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru to Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, to name anybody and everybody, including Mr. Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Every lawyer of stature, every lawyer of any standing, and virtually every other lawyer, those who were not leaders, participated in the freedom struggle. And they did so to ensure that we got freedom as quickly as possible, and that India became a free and independent nation after centuries. Now, this role of the lawyers during the freedom struggle is something which is extremely akin to the present times. Yes, we are not today talking about freedom from political masters, but we are talking about freedom of citizens from their difficulties. The freedom that they should have from their challenges. And these challenges are not just economic challenges, but there are very serious legal challenges that today's citizens of India face. And therefore, it is very important for us lawyers, collectively, the bar, to really recognize and introspect and decide what we can do for the citizens of this country, for this nation ultimately. And this is something which we must really think every moment that we are passing through this crisis. There are various challenges. The first and foremost is that the bar must be a very, very unequivocal and a strong voice for the people of the country. Because we, the lawyers, are expected to be courageous and bold. We have to therefore speak because we know the law. We know what the rights of citizens are. We know how those rights are not being observed. We know how those rights are being virtually trampled upon. We know that the remedies that citizens have are not really working to their best advantage. Now, this is something that we as the bar must constantly be thinking about. We must talk about it. We must do everything that we can to push the system, both the executive and the judicial system, to ensure that citizens of India get what is due to them. And this is something, very important because, like the freedom struggle, the human dignity today is really under challenge. When we see millions, hundreds of millions of migrant workers walking with their children on their shoulders and their little, possessions on their heads, we must realize that the nation has virtually stripped them off naked of their dignity. And this is unexpected. Let me tell you one thing, that those forefathers of ours who fought valiantly and gave us this freedom, those who wrote the Constitution for us, the Constituent Assembly settlers, all from the top, from above, must be seeing and must be really wondering that, is this the nation that we gave to the Indians of tomorrow? Is this what the Indians are doing for their own brothers and sisters? They must be condemning us. We must keep that in mind, that therefore we have to live up to every expectation that these constitutional forefathers had from us. These freedom fighters had us from us. Unless we remember that obligation, that expectation, we will not be able to serve our people better. So, speaking about the problems of people is the first thing the bar must do. Bar must organize, groups of lawyers who can find out the problems of the people and address those problems, both at the level of the executive, the administration, and at the level of the judiciary. Because collective voice from the bar on behalf of these helpless citizens, even to the administration, will carry a very strong weight. If a group of lawyers, let's say 25 or 50 lawyers, were to stand and help the migrant workers or other people who are suffering today, for example, patients who are not getting, proper treatments in government hospitals. Now, or those, people who have died and are not getting a decent burial at this time, or cremation. Now, all kinds of problems are coming up today. So the bar must, organize groups of lawyers, especially the young lawyers. And, the young bar today is extraordinarily energetic. It is extraordinarily gifted. The kind of opportunities they have had in last 10 years or 15 years, we never had when we started our practice, 40 years ago. So this young bar is really far more capable. It is much more better educated, and they have seen, the world much better than what we have done. The opportunities that they have are amazing. They therefore must organize at various levels, like, organizing the present webinar. So, there are so many issues that we have to take. For example, the wages of the in the migrant labor. If the employers are not paying, the young lawyers should be able to immediately organize some kind of actions, legal actions, to go before the labor courts, or if necessary before the high courts, and get some kind of strong interim orders against the employers. So there are myriad possibilities where lawyers can help the society today, which is really suffering in immense way. Now, if this responsibility the lawyers exercise, discharge, then they would have really done what they are expected to do as lawyers. Because as lawyers, we are the biggest upholders of rule of law. Today, what you are seeing on the streets of every village, town, or city, on every highway, is that there is a virtual breakdown of rule of law. We, therefore, as lawyers, have to ensure that this rule of law is established as quickly as possible. Please do not think that the responsibility entirely lies with the executive, the administration, and the police. No. Yes, they are doing their job. They are working overtime. They are working hard. They are working, at the cost of their lives. We must commend them. But they have their limitations. They cannot think as lawyers can think, to give, relief, to get relief, to provide remedies to people who are suffering in so many ways. Therefore, we as lawyers can, immediately organize ourselves. I must say that the bar associations have great responsibilities in this regard, and bar associations have their own limitations also. And I don't think it is fair to expect that bar associations alone can address these problems. It's not necessary. You need not even go to the bar associations for them. Any group of 10, 20 lawyers can get together and start thinking as to how they can help people within their area, people who are around them, and try and see that their miseries are reduced as far as possible. It is impossible to wipe every tear from the face of every Indian who is now shedding the tears because of the kind of challenges that he or she is facing. But at least effort must be made. So this, to my mind, is the first and foremost duty, and it requires, therefore, courage on the part of young lawyers today to really expose. For example, even in executive, there are good elements and there are bad elements. It is necessary, therefore, to confront the bad elements, expose them, so that you can put pressure on them to see that they do not inflict injustices on citizens. For example, I'll give you, I saw the other day a report that on Surat railway station, the migrant labor who were to go back to their homes were being asked to pay bribes for the purpose of buying tickets. Now, this is something which is unacceptable. They anyway have no jobs, they have no money, they have no savings. They want to go back to their homes. Where are they going to get this money from? So, situations like this, if lawyers were to continuously watch the televisions, for example, regional channels, then you will find that there are so many problems that citizens are facing today. So, organize ourselves and, in terms of groups, and start providing immediate relief to the people who need it in the form of, getting their access to the judicial system, because on their own, they are helpless. They cannot really have access to judicial system today. They don't have the time, they don't have the money, and they really don't have any time to even think where to turn to. They are all on the streets. They are all without jobs. So bar really has, I would say, the greatest opportunity. Please look at this as an opportunity to serve the nation. And if we serve the nation to the best of our abilities in this time, I can promise you lots and lots of problems of citizens, lots and lots of their sorrows will be removed. And that is where we must immediately start making effort. So please, first and foremost, the bar must, organize and create groups at various levels, in various parts of cities that you live in, or in the state that you live in, and address these issues as quickly as possible. The other, of course, is very important to ensure that judiciary becomes sensitive to the challenges that the people are facing today. See, under the Constitution, the judiciary is supposed to be the watchdog over the executive actions or inactions. Now, if the watchdog is not performing well, which, with greatest respect to the judiciary, which I really admire and respect, it has not done for at least last 8 weeks till some days ago, it was the duty of the bar to have spoken up. If the bar speaks again and again, the judges will really realize that they are making a mistake. They are also human beings. See, it is very natural for everybody in times of crisis to take a back seat and say, oh, somebody else is going to do the work. So judiciary perhaps felt that why should we bother? Let the executive do this work, because this is executive's role. This is executive's job. No, it's not, because the executive also has limitations. So a strong, courageous voice from members of the bar, even if a group of 50 lawyers were to get together, or 100 lawyers, and pass resolution, positive resolution. I'm not saying that we go on criticizing judiciary for the sake of it. No. But if we positively speak to the judiciary in these groups courageously, and tell judiciary that you must intervene, you must help, these are the issues you must help, go to the court, file PILs. Yes, many of these PILs are not entertained. I understand that, but don't be deterred by it. So sensitizing judiciary is very, very important at this stage. And therefore, it is important for bar to have interaction with the judges on personal level, bar to the bench, and also through judicial process that the lawyers can initiate on behalf of helpless citizens of the country. So that's the second thing that really is very important. that bar should try and address at this time. The third is, also equally important, that this is the time that bar has to collectively also look after its own members. See, let us not forget one thing, that the bar comprises of thousands and thousands of lawyers. And sadly, being a profession where, there is no control in terms of practice, a substantial part of work is garnered or controlled, whatever way one looks at it, by few lawyers, few successful lawyers. Therefore, there are a large number of lawyers today who need help, who need very serious help. They need help in terms of financial aid. They need help in terms of other, help. I'll tell you, for example, as president of the bar of the Supreme Court, I get every alternate day very unusual requests. Somebody's wife is stuck somewhere in some other city and he wants to bring her. Somebody says that he is unable to go to the hospital for a regular checkup. Somebody says that he is not being allowed to go out to buy, regular medicine. Somebody has some other problem. All kinds of people, have problems. And as bar leader, responsibility lies on me to try and reach out to them and help them as much as I can. It's not that every time I can help them, but more often than not, let me tell you, with the help of other lawyers coming from various states, especially the lawyers of the state governments and the central government, who really have access to the executive and the police, I have been able to get, help a lot of lawyers who needed help. So this is one area where the bar has to now start buckling up. Financial help is absolutely necessary. We get, in Supreme Court bar, we are getting requests for financial assistance on such large scale that it really scares me today. And I genuinely understand people are in difficulty. We are trying to reach out to them. We have floated loan scheme. We have now, initiated the outright grant scheme. So as part of our welfare measures, we are trying to do it. But these measures can be successful if the successful lawyers of the bar come forward and really extend financial help generously to their bar associations or directly to those lawyers who really need help. So this is something which the bar has to do right now, that it must reach out to its own members and help them, while helping the members of generally helping the members of the society at large also. So this is one thing that we must do. The other is, of course, and which is the responsibility of the Bar Association, that we must try and ensure that the judicial system starts working as per its original, in the original form as quickly as possible. Look, it is impossible to conceive, at least for a foreseeable future, and to me, that foreseeable future may be 10 years, that the entire judicial system in the country can be computerized, and we can have digitized filings, and we can have e-hearings for the purpose of, filing and hearing and deciding the cases. That's a distant dream to my mind, and it will require such large amounts of money, which I am not sure whether government will be able to, offer to the judiciary in near future or not. So we have to therefore now start thinking as to what are the alternative ways in which we can now, kickstart the judicial system's functioning. There are thousands of people who are in jail today. Their bail applications are pending. There are thousands of people whose appeals against acquittals are pending. There are thousands of people who are under trial, prisoners who are facing trials. There are habeas corpus petitions. There are thousands of other litigants who need all kinds of justices from the judicial system. Somebody is being evicted from his house. Somebody is losing his job. Somebody is not getting his wages. Somebody's contract is violated and the other party is not paying that person. So, it can be a problem that people can face from a smallest issue to the largest issue. Everybody needs justice ultimately for resolution of their disputes with the other party. Government, for example, is the biggest litigant, because the citizens are entering into, a relationship with government in many ways, and government, terminate those relationships. Now, if the government terminates those relationships, whether contractual or not, in an illegal manner, people must have access to justice. If they don't have access to justice, what is going to happen? So there are so many types of cases, so many, they are in, I would say, innumerable types of cases, numbering thousands and thousands, which need immediate judicial redressal. Now, if that judicial redressal is not coming because of COVID-19, which is fair enough that so far judiciary was unable to do it, but how long are we going to wait? Because this virus is now here to stay for some time. As things are developing, it is increasing, it's not going away. So as a bar, it is our duty to interact with the judges and find a very practical solution where, without compromising the health and well-being of all the stakeholders, the judges, the lawyers, our clerks, court staff, and the litigants, we can start the regular functioning of the courts in as best possible manner as we can. Besides, of course, the video hearings, etc., can certainly continue. You can have different timings for different things. So bar will have to assist the judges, and I really hope, and I appeal, and I beseech the judges, including the judges of the Supreme Court led by the Chief Justice of India, and every Chief Justice in a High Court, and his brother judges and sister judges, that they should think of some ways to prioritize the cases which can be taken up, and how those cases then can be divided amongst the judges, and how the hearings can begin with as few people in court premises as possible, and yet as large number of people can get justice as possible. Now, this is something where the judiciary will have to think completely out of box. Judiciary will need to consult management experts, organizational experts, medical experts, and security personnel, as also the court staff, besides the bar, to decide how to go about this exercise. If this exercise is devised and executed as quickly as possible, for which bar will have to really take the initiative, I think we would have done an immense service to the nation, to the litigants, and to the rule of law, because otherwise the rule of law is virtually at a standstill, and which is not a good thing for a democracy. So this is something that the bar will have to really think very quickly and do as fast as possible. So these are some of the things that which must be done. Besides, the bar, this is the time when the bar also must introspect as to how the bar can enrich itself during this lockdown period. It should not be a period which is whiled away without doing anything, because we are not able to go to court. Therefore, it doesn't mean that we don't do anything. The bar must therefore try and enrich itself by organizing seminars, lecture series, continuing education programs, and of course, every member of the bar must spend as much time in a day as possible to read about law and developments of law. And this is something where the leaders of the bar, because in every part of India there are outstanding lawyers. I mean, India's bar is one of the finest in the world, and there are even today at after 4 decades of practice, I still look up to some of the senior most lawyers in the Supreme Court who have so much to contribute, from whom we have so much to learn. And I really hope that these lawyers will come forward and start some kind of a interactive dialogue with young members of the bar, so that they can transmit their knowledge, their experience, their wisdom to the young members of the bar. This is the time when they would find time to do so, and this is the time when the young members of the bar would find time to really look up to them, listen to them, and imbibe what is to be given by them. So these are extremely, I would say, time, in one sense, extremely challenging times. But in another sense, these are times which provide unbelievable opportunities. It is for us, the bar collectively and as lawyers individually, that we must know how to optimize these opportunities. We must make the most of these opportunities so that we can really do something good to the society and the nation, to our profession, and of course to ourselves. And if we can do this, even to a reasonable extent, nobody says that it should be, we can achieve 100% of what we are wanting to do. No, but even if we can achieve to some extent, I think that would be a phenomenal achievement, and it would go down in not just in our memories, but it would go down in history, that here was a bar during the COVID-19 situation in the country where they really did something positive for the nation, for the society, and for themselves. And that would be the greatest certificate that we would look up to. Thank you very, very much.
I thank you, Dave sir, for your wonderful words regarding this entire issue. Uh, Many of the questions which have been in our mind for quite some time have been already addressed by you, sir. And more specifically, I would like to say that as a junior advocate myself, uh, I really know this particular fact that this profession requires appropriate guidance, appropriate mentorship on I mean, in all stands with respect to junior advocates, with respect to other lawyers as professionals practice in the court. We would be moving now towards the question and answer session. I have some questions with me, which I would like to ask you, sir. In the past, Sir himself has contributed to numerous social causes. What, according to you, sir, is the role of a senior advocate in the society, especially in such a crisis situation? This crisis situation is of peculiar importance because everything in the entire world is at a standstill. So, what is the role of a senior advocate in this crisis situation?
Well, the answer is in what I already discussed with you all, and of course there is a much greater responsibility on the shoulders of senior advocates, because they are designated as senior because they have certain stature, they have certain experience, they have certain ethical standards, and they have certain responsibilities and duties. So these are the times when senior lawyers have to rise to the occasion and conduct themselves in a manner which is befitting as seniors. And the best thing that they can do is that they should be ready. They should be constantly striving to guide the bar, the young members of the bar, collectively and individually, so that the bar can achieve many of the objectives that we discussed earlier.
Very well, sir. The next question. Now, in this crisis situation, we are seeing a lot of transformation going on in the entire legal profession with respect to the judicial aspects as well, with respect to the lawyers and their thought process as well. The primary aspect is about virtual courts and e-courts. So, do you think that the entire judicial system now requires a significant amount of infrastructural overhaul?
You see, there is no doubt that it requires huge, unthinkable, transformation of the system, which includes the changing of the physical infrastructure, and also, of course, the knowledge content, to make this transition from the physical judicial system to virtual judicial system. And this is a, I would say, it's a Herculean task. It's not an easy task. In fact, I can't even start to imagine what can be done about it, because that there are thousands and thousands of courts in India, from villages to, Mofussil towns, to taluka towns, to district towns, to high courts and the Supreme Court. And, with almost 4 crore cases pending in those courts, and every year, several 100,000 cases being filed, fresh. It is impossible to conceive how we are going to really make transition from physical form to digital form, even in filing of pleadings, and then having e-hearings in the, it's very, very difficult. I read somewhere that United Kingdom started this process in 2015, and they had earmarked a budget of £1 billion for that, and they wanted to complete it by 2020. And I am told that even till 2020, they have not been able to achieve half of their objective, and they've already spent more than 1.5 billion pounds. And it's a very small country. It has a very small judicial system, and it has very, very few cases compared to India. So our task is going to be extraordinarily, difficult. You will have to change even the very court buildings to really, adjust, because our court buildings are made in such a way that it's not very easy to computerize them. The internet accessibility will not be there, and many other problems will come. So, I mean, beginning with that, and providing the technology, the equipment, and training, all that is really, I think it's, to my mind, it is impossible to think. And the biggest problem is that we did not start thinking about it long time ago. India is one of the finest, one of the pioneers in the, in the field of computer technology and in the field of outsourcing and other things. We have giants like TCS, Wipro, Infosys, and many others. We are today some of the finest players in the world, and yet the judiciary never thought that it should make this transition. If it had started doing it slowly 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, or 20 years ago, when the industry started developing simultaneously, I think by now we would have achieved a lot. So, I mean, it's the thinking also will have to be first brought in. Unless we have that thinking, unless we have that foresight, and that foresight will be required more from the judges than the bar, because the judges generally like to, think that they alone have the right to think about the judiciary's well-being, and that lawyers don't have really a role to play in that, which is not a good sign, which is not a good thinking, but that's what it is. And however hard some of us may try to change that thinking, I think the judges are not easily likely to change their outlook in this regard.
So just to continue what you have said, and to further elaborate and add an extension to it, as you rightly said that there is some resistance on the part of the judges or the entire earlier judicial system, I would frame it that way. So do you feel that the lawyers at the bar as well, they are a bit resistant towards adopting new technology, and they are a bit resistant towards adopting the new faces of maybe facets of the virtual courts or the e-courts?
Well, it's natural. I mean, speaking for myself, I'm technology challenged. Let me tell you very, I can admit it very bluntly. Except, doing my mobile or WhatsApp and emails on my mobile, I just don't, I've never gone on internet to search anything, or, so I have reservations, but I will still say that I'm willing to change. I'm willing to learn. I'm no doubt that the bar today comprises essentially of young people. And this young generation of lawyers, I mean, I would say over 60% of lawyers or 70% lawyers are in the age group of 30 to 50. And these lawyers are very, very quick to adapt. And I have no doubt that they will be able to. Yes, of course, the bar also, one of the things that we will have to seriously think about is that the bar also needs financial support to make this transition. See, there are thousands and thousands of lawyers who may not be able to afford even an iPad. So, it's very difficult for us to, so we will need to equip them, we will need to train them. And it's a very slow process. But I personally feel that resistance from the bar will not be so strong as to stop us from going into these innovative areas.
Sir, do you feel, again, a small extension to your explanation, do you feel, sir, that the lawyers should have had prepared themselves, or maybe should have had sort of a contingency aspect towards the technology, and the technology adaptation is a continuous process to be adapted for any kind of unforeseen events, maybe like this particular crisis. But definitely adapting new technology is beneficial. Somewhere do you feel, sir, that the lawyers themselves should go into a self-learning mode, so as to prevent such kind of a repetition, which definitely is costing them as well?
I completely agree with you. I mean, for example, we must immediately start introducing computer science as one subject in law colleges. Because if you have not, learned that subject in your school, then certainly it's something which you must, and even otherwise, computer technology and law is something, a new subject will have to be, devised. New syllabus will have to be devised, and that must be introduced with immediate effect. Simultaneously, the bar associations have a great responsibility. The Bar Council of India, the state bar councils, and every bar association of every bar in the country, in every court, will have to make very, very strenuous efforts, innovative efforts to really ensure, to see that it's their members, the lawyers in general, get this kind of training which is required of this, computerization and law. So that will help in making very quick inroads for lawyers, especially lawyers who are in the age group of 50 plus, and who are really not very familiar. I mean, most of them. I mean, some of them are very proficient. I mean, in my bar, I have lawyer friends who even in the age group of 70 plus are extraordinarily, I would say, comfortable with technology. So I think both the law education and the bar councils and bar associations will have to start working in this regard.
We move on to our last question, which is regarding some of the preliminary issues which came up during the COVID situation in front of the Supreme Court. Initially, the Supreme Court was refusing to interfere into the issues relating the migrant laborers, and then the Supreme Court suo moto took cognizance of the same much later. So, do you feel, sir, that there would have been a proper redressal mechanism with respect to specifically this particular issue, wherein if the Honorable Supreme Court would have had interfered earlier, there would be a situation which would have been much better with respect to the migrants' laborers issue right now?
No, there is no doubt about the fact that judiciary had to be proactive in situations like this. See, you must understand one thing, that in our constitution, the checks and balances are provided. So every organ of the state, executive, judiciary, and legislature, they are checks on each other. So, and they balance, therefore, the proper working and functioning of the democracy. Now, secondly, most important aspect, that under our constitution, especially, look at the breadth and content of Article 14. It strikes at arbitrariness in every form. This is very important. Article 14 is omnipresent. Therefore, it is now settled law. We have fantastic administrative law which is developed in this country. We got it from the United Kingdom, but our judiciary has taken administrative law to greater heights. One principle that our law is well established over last 3-4 decades is that no decision of the government is unreviewable. And secondly, that nobody is above the law. However high you may be, the law is above you. Now, these are two principles which the judges should have kept in mind. Let me tell you two examples, and which really I feel, we could have served this nation much better as a judiciary. Take, for example, demonetization. I mean, government has a right. Prime Minister has a right to take a decision as he thinks fit. But judiciary has a duty to immediately examine whether that decision is a rational decision. Is it based on some cogent material? What are its consequences going to be? Now, if this was done, the demonetization killed the economy. And from 2016 to 2020, in February, when COVID-19 struck us, the economy has not been able to get back on its feet. People have suffered in many, many ways. Millions of jobs were lost. Many industries have been shut down, and many services have been shut down, and agricultural sector has suffered. So, if the judiciary had reviewed the decision at that point of time, that, ultimately, constitution is suprema lex, and nobody, including the prime minister, is imperio in imperium, as they call it. He is under the law. So if judiciary had a duty, if judiciary had examined, see, every economist in the world said, including India's top economists, that decision to demonetize was not the right decision. And it frankly did not achieve any purpose, as we are seeing it. That whole idea was to drive out black money from our economy. That purpose was not achieved, because almost reportedly 16 lakh crores have been received in the banks following demonetization. But in that process, hundreds and hundreds of people died standing in queues. Many people were ruined in many other fashion. So this is one example. Secondly, take COVID-19. I mean, it is inconceivable that even with all his good, objects, good desires, good intentions, the prime minister can take a decision that in 4 hours, I will lock down the whole country. Now, this is something which is unheard of, that the judiciary would not step in within 24 hours and stop it. Because, you have to realize that in this country, I mean, hundreds of million people live below poverty line. They depend on daily work, daily wage. They work in the morning to evening, they earn money, they go and buy food, and they survive. Millions, hundreds of million people are migrant workers away from their homes in villages, and they are in cities working in factories or in shops or in restaurants or in services of all kinds. Now, nobody could have ignored these realities. You had shut down the railways, you had shut down the buses. Now, with 4 hours lockdown, with all factories shut, all avenues of employment taken away, no money coming, no savings, no food being distributed properly. I mean, the miseries of the people were bound to befall on the entire nation. The judges had to be mindful of this fact. They had to step in and say, we are not saying that there should be no lockdown. Of course, lockdown must be brought, but lockdown must be brought in a guided manner, in an organized manner, in a just manner. See, ultimately, what has lockdown really done? It has virtually taken away from every Indian right to live with dignity under Article 21. And it has cost thousands of people right to life. While walking on the roads, how many people have died? Who will compensate for all that? So the suffering, look at the suffering for last year. 8 weeks are over. Still we are seeing thousands of people at railway stations, bus stations, on the roads. It was therefore very important for judges to have realized that these citizens are helpless. The government has foisted upon the nation a decision which prima facie appears to be completely arbitrary. And therefore could have said that, yes, you please bring the lockdown, but do it after 1 week or 10 days. Now what has happened? It is a very peculiar situation. You kept these hundreds of million people in cities. Okay, they live in extremely thickly populated areas. Now, they may or may have come across, coronavirus patients, and they may have acquired, they may be asymptomatic at the moment. You are now encouraging them and arranging trains for them to go back to the villages. And they will therefore be transmitting this disease from the cities to the villages, where the health infrastructure is extremely poor, where the sources of employment are non-existent. So it was therefore absolutely imperative for judiciary to have stepped in, because it can't be that judiciary just sits, thinking that government is the best person to decide what is the welfare of the people. Not in our constitution, not in today's times. We don't live in some kind of a, monarchy. We live in democracy, and we are only, guided by the constitution, nothing else. So I definitely do feel that judiciary had to act swiftly, but in a very meaningful, in a very positive manner, to assist the executive, not to throttle the executive. If that had happened, perhaps we could have achieved much better results than what we are seeing today for last almost 9 weeks.
Very well, sir. Indeed, it was a detailed explanation to all our questions. It was a wonderful talk. You have touched upon most of the facets with respect to the role of the bar, the lawyers, the judiciary, the role of all these three pillars, verticals at the right time to avoid social disharmony, maybe, or such a crisis situation as well. It was a privilege listening to you, sir, as it has always been so. I thank you once again for being a part of this wonderful webinar as a speaker, guiding us through our roles and responsibilities, our duties as well, and our rights as well. I thank you, all the attendees as well, to be a part of this particular webinar. This webinar is being streamed live on YouTube. It would be uploaded as a recorded session, so you can view it later as well. And for the next webinar, you can always go on to our social media pages, keep yourself updated. All the links regarding our next webinar and the updates would be available on our social media pages soon. I once again thank you, Advocate Dave, sir, to be a speaker for today's webinar.
Welcome. Thank you.
I hereby state that the webinar for today has been concluded. Thank you.